Hi everyone. Today I'm going to be talking to you about ants. Now I know it can be hard to get interested in ants, especially when the only interaction that you have is flicking them off food that you're about to eat. I thought this too until I read a quote by a guy named Edward Owen Wilson. And he said that if all humankind were to disappear tomorrow, it's unlikely that a single insect species would go extinct. But if insects were to vanish, the terrestrial environment would soon collapse into chaos, which is pretty humbling to think about. What's even more humbling is that ants have the second largest biomass in the world. This means that they have not only dominated the insect world, but they have expanded to almost every terrestrial environment on this planet. In considering all of this, it can be understood why so many scientists have dedicated their studies to try and understand how and why they are so successful. A hot topic is their colony structure. How does one fertile queen give birth to everyone, and how do all these female workers repair the nest, guard the queen, and collect food for everyone? Basically, they've evolved a complex eusocial society where each individual works for the benefit of each other rather than themselves. So then scientists asked, if they have such a complex society, how do they communicate with each other? And it was found out that they mainly communicate through chemical and tactile signals. It was also found that these forms of communication are used particularly in the process of foraging. First, patrol workers will venture out of the nest and find food. It is only once these patrollers return safely will the forager ants pick up on their chemical signals and go and harvest the food. However, how efficiently these ants harvest the food has been studied less. Whether the ants send too many or too little workers to each piece of food determines if they are efficiently partitioning their workers. In considering that ants are so successful across the globe, I hypothesized that natural selection would favor the beneficial trait of being able to socially organize themselves and evolve to perform at an optimal efficiency when collecting food. This is the topic that my study looks at, with my research question being, can ants respond efficiently when locating different sized items of food? The way I decided to test this efficiency idea was to place two different sized foods at either end of a nest and see if a different number of ants went to each food bit. I began by mushing up some tuna and separated them into small and big portions. At the mouth of each nest, I gently swabbed around the area to help attract the ants and placed the food around the nest. I then took photos of this at 1 minute intervals for 20 minutes and repeated this with 5 different other nests. I also made a control, and I did this by using the same size food and putting it at either end of the nest, and if the experiment was set up well, then the same amount of ants, or roughly, would go to each food bit. The boring bit was counting the ants in the photos. I then took the difference between the two different size foods because the difference is actually what we're interested in. It is important to note that if the difference is positive, then more ants went to the big portion of food, and if the difference is negative, then more ants went to the smaller portion of food. Since there was quite a range of different numbers, I thought the comparisons would make more sense if I made each difference a percentage of that nest. Here you can see the graphs of all the nests, and they seem pretty variable. The control is also non-linear, but interestingly, it shows a clear pattern of movement the ants took. From here I averaged all the replicates and compared this to the control. This comparison showed that there actually was a difference. They both showed this non-linear trend as the colony explores both food bits, and then they partition themselves depending on the situation. In the treatments we can see more ants at the larger portion of food, and in the control we can see a more even partitioning between the two food bits. To prove that this evidence was not by chance, I ran it through a statistical test called a t-test, which showed that the results actually held statistical significance. This supports the original hypothesis that yes, ants do have behavioral and social traits that allow them to efficiently partition themselves between different food bits, that they do have organized foraging and they can return food to the nest as fast as possible. This is beneficial for the ants because it would help them retrieve food before other scavengers may get to it, for example. This experiment gives insights into one of the many reasons why ants have evolved to be such a dominant feature in our environment and across the globe.